once you've seen Antarctica, you have seen one of the world's true wilderness areas. And nothing I tell you right now can describe to you the way I'm feeling. But it gets under your skin and it gets into your blood. And it makes me realise why those early explorers, no matter how many hardships they faced, travelled so far around the world to see what no man had ever seen before.
My name's Lynn Sutherland. I'm an adventurer and environmentalist. I partnered with EarthCheck in my quest to uncover the world's best practice in sustainable tourism. My journey took me to exotic locations where people are coming together in a bid to preserve the planet. We need to know the impact tourism has on these incredible destinations and the role each of us must play as responsible travellers. Antarctica is a land of outstanding beauty. Despite being one of the driest, windiest and coldest places on Earth. My journey to Antarctica started from Hobart in Australia, where I boarded the expedition ship Orion. On this voyage, we would travel nearly 2,000 kilometres to the Ross Sea, and as the temperature gauge plummeted, the sights made our heart rate soar. While we travel in style and learn about the hardships that the early explorers faced, Orion's crew makes us aware of the part tourism has to play in helping ensure Antarctica remains pristine forevermore. It was Captain Cook's diaries from when he crossed the Antarctic Circle in 1773 that first made the world aware of how teeming with life this southern ocean is. Unfortunately, those words attracted the attention of whalers and sealers and almost brought ruin to this frozen frontier. Our epic voyage at sea brought us to the stunning Cape Adare. I was ecstatic to be visiting one of the last true nature wildernesses of the world, home to millions of very adorable Adelie penguin residents.
But this place we know as Antarctica used to be referred to as Terra Australis Incognita. And only the very brave dared to come down to these uncharted waters. And when they did, they faced extreme conditions. But this place right here was the very first place anyone ever spent a winter in Antarctica.
Although they may not have known it at the time, those early explorers were putting in place the path that future tourists would follow a century in the future.
The roof was held down by strong wires. They lined it with sealskin so that to keep out that fine bits of snow. But you can see after so many years, 110 years, that the fabric of the timber, while it's ablated, is still really solid.
Because these huts are so significant, we've got to make sure nothing gets inside them. Now I've got clean boots, it's time to have a look in the hut. You've got rations, you've got... Well, Alistair.
We've got some tempting morsels over here. We've got some luncheon tongue, some pea soup ration.
Looking around, it was not quite like our 5-star menu on the Orion. But it was amazing to see how well prepared these early explorers were when they travelled so far from home. There was no corner shop, and once the winter hit, daylight was only something one could dream about.
Next on the list, what do you do when you're in Antarctica and you've already done everything on shore and the weather's perfect? Right? What you do is you do a polar plunge. Stand by.
When you first hit, it's not so crazy. But then when your brain suddenly realises where you are and your heart goes, I think it's the lack of breath, actually. It's the lack of breath, because after a few seconds you start not being able to breathe properly, and that's when you sort of go, there's breath.
Ice and weather, rather than clocks or calendars, determine Antarctic itineraries. In winter, pack ice extends 1,000 kilometres around most of the frozen continent, plunging it into darkness for close to 24 hours a day. In summer days, where daylight penetrates for up to 24 hours at a time, wildlife is more visible.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning right now, and you could easily think it was the middle of the day. We're so far south that the sun just is not setting anymore. You just watch it go horizontally across the horizon. And look at it. We have come to the Ross Sea, and there is Mount Erebus.
As luck would have it, the weather gods were smiling on us, and we would be able to take the Zodiacs to shore and visit one of the most famous historic places in Antarctica.
British exploration of Antarctica was really dominated by two men, Scott and Shackleton, who both wanted to be the first person to get to the South Pole. This is Scott's hut. It's pretty much been left exactly the way it is, so let's take a look and see how these guys lived. Hey, Alistair.
Hello, Lynn. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Very well.
How important was Scott's expedition here to Antarctica?
Well, it's one of the great Antarctic expeditions. Most people who've heard of Antarctica have heard of Robert Falcon Scott. For better or ill, I suppose. He's rather a controversial character these days. The controversy, I don't think, takes away from the impact of a place like this and the endeavour that these people went through to get here, set up this sort of establishment, and then sledge off into the unknown. It's quite extraordinary.
It's amazing. There's a lot of snow out there. How long did he live in here?
They were here for a full 2 winters, so they were here for nearly 3 years in all. Yeah.
But it's quite an amazing hut.
Oh, it's enormous compared to some of the others you see, but there was a large party.
So how many people lived in here?
Over 20.
Wow, okay.
This wall of boxes here, when it was complete, it formed a partition. This area here was for the lower ranks, the sailors, and the other side was for the scientists and the officers. So it's very much run on British naval lines.
So, Di, are these the stables? Yes, these are the stables where the ponies were kept. It's all the stalls. It's really a part of a veranda of the whole building. And opposite each stall, they've stenciled the names of each of the ponies. So they've got rather exotic names, I guess, because I think they were the Siberian pony. You see the skeleton of one of the huskies in the far stall. He was outside on the ice for many years, but he's been brought in, again as part of that interpretation, to tell the story of the huts so that we don't forget that there were the huskies here. All of this has been conserved by the Heritage Trust, and we're lucky to see it in such in this way. They've done an amazing job to bring it back so that we can really get that sense of the ponies and in Antarctica.
It's quite surreal walking through here and picturing all the men in the hut here. You can see their bears, you see where they sat at the table, you can see the kitchen, and it just makes you think back to what they went through and what they experienced. It's really surreal, and as you look around, every little thing tells you another story.
Scott and Shackleton both fought so hard to get to the South Pole. Both of them making multiple trips, facing life and death situations. On Scott's final journey, he was beaten by only 3 weeks to the South Pole by the Norwegian explorer Amundsen. Seeing the photo of Scott and his polar party standing at the pole, all of them looking extremely exhausted, dejected and defeated, was haunting. Scott died on that return journey on the ice, while his men were waiting in the warmth of this hut for their return. Then there were the stories of Shackleton, who had to endure an entire winter on the ice, when his ship became caught between the pack ice. On another voyage, he turned back 100 miles before his prize of the pole, but he and his men survived. He was hailed a hero in bringing all his men home, but we also learned this was not quite the full story.
So this is a cross for Shackleton's men.
Yeah, that's right. It's a little confusing. It's on the side of Scott's hut, but 3 of Shackleton's men that were here to set up the depots across to the South Pole, so that when Shackleton was coming across the entire Antarctic continent, he'd pick up those food depots. They were out here on sea ice and drifted out, and that was it. They never got back. So, you know, many people think that Shackleton got all his men home, but there was actually 3 in this party that died. In that era, you really have a situation where there's no one here to help them whatsoever. You know, if something dramatic happens, they're totally self-sufficient, and if they just happen to disappear, no one would ever know what happened. And that was the situation often in various parts of Antarctica.
Being able to visit Shackleton's hut makes you aware that Antarctica really isn't a place for the faint-hearted. If you come here, you must be prepared for the long haul, as the elements are in control of your fate, and one mistake can be the last one you'll ever make.
It was a beautiful sunny day this morning here in Antarctica with barely any wind, and then we came to visit Shackleton's hut, and halfway through our visit they said, "Now we gotta go, we gotta go." We're like, "What do you mean?" And it's because the pack ice starts to move in, and when the pack ice starts to move in, it can move in really quickly. And if you look at, see, this is all big, massive blocks of floating ice, so they're going up and down, but the wind's pushing them all together, and they're all kind of getting in the way of us and the big boat. So this is our path back to the boat. But as you can see, in the way are all these big blocks of ice. So right now what they're trying to do is get the little dinghies through the ice. And you've got to move really quickly because they can squeeze together and you can get stuck. But we've now sent a crew over and they've packed it, or they've taken some ice picks and they've made a trail through so we can get back to the boat. Pretty cool, but it just makes you respect the weather here. You really can't take it lightly. You have to be on standby at all times to make sure if anything happens and the wind changes, you're on full alert to get out of here. If we'd stayed longer, we might have stayed here all night. Got it?
Penguins were going one way and we were going the other.
Time to be the human sled. And this is so we can know what it felt like for Shackleton and his men to drag things all that way through the snow.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Easy! My flying dogs!
It was time again to hit the high seas. And with hundreds of miles of ocean to cross, we decided to have a little fun with the lighter side of Antarctica.
These guys are really good at making these snowballs. My biggest problem is I make it, but you've really got to compress it. So because I get attacked so quickly, you just know.
After the snow melted, it was again an open passage on the return journey. We would be heading for New Zealand, but the gentle mood of Antarctica swung, and it was time to get a little taste of rough seas. As the seas rose, I passed time by keeping fit, enjoying books, and attending the many lectures that became our way of life on the vessel. After a very long and sometimes rough passage, our final stop lay in front of us.
I am at Campbell Island, which is one of New Zealand's sub-Antarctic islands. Now this place, pretty much nature ruled, and there's some wildlife that you can find nowhere else in the world, including the Campbell Island teal duck, also the hooker sea lions and the royal albatross. Well, we have 5 Campbell Island shags. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these guys are only found here on Campbell Island. The hooker sea lion, and he's just come to say hello. Hi, buddy. Hi. Can we visit your island? G'day. Hello. Oh. We're very lucky with the weather. Look at it. It's a beautiful day here on Campbell Island, but apparently it's supposed to rain 320 days a year. That means we are very, very lucky. We've got a pair of hooker sea lions. We just got to the jetty and here they are to greet us. The female's the one on the right and then there's the male behind us. But as you can see, the little ears, they're the eared seals, part of the eared seal family. Aren't they cute? They've got these big puppy dog eyes. We haven't even left the wharf yet and already we're getting pretty close. These two have been, having this love tussle for the last 15 minutes or so, and they're getting quite amorous. But it looks rough at times, and it looks like they might hurt each other, but they definitely haven't made a mark or anything like that yet, and they're still playing around, so I think it might just be a little bit of rough love.
After being a little jealous of the couple clearly in love, it was time to stretch the legs and explore the island.
I've stopped to smell the daisies because it's a pretty long walk up here, but you've got to stop every now and then to appreciate what's on the track. And you've got these beautiful wildflowers just sitting on the side of the track, and then if you look down there, views to die for.
I love climbing mountains, but my main mission was to find the royal albatross, a magnificent bird with one of the largest wingspans in the world. With albatross species declining rapidly, this picturesque home is their sanctuary.
Well, we're really in royal albatross territory now. They're just everywhere. They're flying over the cliffs. They're calling to each other just on the top of the hill there. And this one is right next to the track. And when you get this close, you realise just how big they are. Hello. But we can't disturb them, we've got to keep moving.
At this time of year, we were able to watch their mating and socialising displays, which involved quite vocal crooning and calling. As we got closer to the top, I could not help but be mesmerised how effortless their flight appeared as these big birds were lifted by the updrafts, gathering in groups, sitting on their nests or soaring high above the cliffs. Albatross can be seen everywhere. With a mighty wingspan that rivals any other bird, they are a mastery of nature, and their survival relies on these remote islands remaining undisturbed. We are so privileged to be coming here, as numbers are limited, and we have all been advised of acceptable code of contact. What we don't want is for our presence to alter bird behaviour or disturb their nesting patterns in any way.
This is an amazing island, Campbell Island. How important are these subantarctic islands?
New Zealand has 5 subantarctic islands, and Auckland Islands and Campbell are the 2 largest by a long way. And they are the ones that have been most disturbed by human contact over the last 100 or so years. And so they are the ones that we've put a lot of effort into trying to restore to as natural conditions as possible.
I mean, going to Antarctica was amazing, but it is one of our last sort of wild frontiers, isn't it?
The other way to look at Antarctica is a barometer to the world and what's going on in the world, and how we are influencing the world with the way we use it or possibly abuse it. And the other thing is it's one huge test tube that we can monitor the world fairly accurately because it's so undamaged compared with most other places in the world.
How do you sort of look at, introducing tourism to a place that is so fragile?
Yes, that is a highly debatable question. And in fact, that's part of my job here. Part of the trade-off for the Antarctic Treaty nations, some of whom are not very enamoured of tourism, is that we do have rules and we do have regulations, and those nations agree to monitor. Everybody who goes to our New Zealand subantarctic islands, the Australian subantarctic islands, or Antarctica has to have a permit. And that includes the highest official that we send down there. Every scientist who goes down there is permitted. Every tourist who goes down to Antarctica or the subantarctic has to have a permit.
Tourism is an economy, but the secret is managing it properly.
Yes, and it can be managed properly, I think, especially ship-based tourism. What worries those of us in the Antarctic scene is land-based tourism, because it is just so difficult. It's so intrusive to be on the land in Antarctica. And if people come down on ships or overfly Antarctica, yes, that is much more tolerable. But the thing that I think that has to be said in favour of tourism is that the very people who come down here become the greatest advocates for the place. They come and they see something truly special, and they go back and almost, in a sense, preach the gospel. And that's got to be good. A scientist can go on about their science till the cows come home, but a tourist can go back and enthrall people with their photographs and with their own enthusiasm for the place in one short visit.
So all we should leave is really footprints in the snow.
And I hope a lot of good memories.
Well, I've got them.
Great.
It's great to see tourism operators respecting the Antarctic Treaty for responsible tourism and doing the right thing. Orion Expeditions is the only operator that has gone beyond that by using EarthCheck's internationally recognised best practice standards. This ensures tourism does not have an adverse effect on the environment and helps the company transform tourists into passionate ambassadors for the preservation of this final frontier.
I travelled with the Orion because of their high standard of practice and the affinity that they have with the environment.
Next time you book a trip, ask the operator what they're doing to help lessen the impact of your travel. Use your purchasing muscle to help make a difference.